Happy 2025, everybody. I want to welcome you to our Week 18 Blue Rush preview show. It's actually the first Blue Rush preview show of the new year, but unfortunately, it's the last Blue Rush preview show of the season. And you'd think there wouldn't be much to talk about going into this one with the Giants sitting at 3-13. They're heading down I-95 to Philly to play the Eagles' B team because Philly's resting their starters, but there's still so much riding on the line for the players and, as you know, the coaches. Plus, there's draft implications, which you guys like talking about. So let's bring in our Giants beat writer for the New York Post, Paul Schwartz. Happy New Year, Paul. How long until you stop saying like Happy New Year and stuff like that? Like
Happy New Year. Well, it depends on when you see the person.
Okay.
This week is totally acceptable. You
Okay.
know how I gauge it a little bit is that Wednesday and Thursday driving to the facility, the traffic was really light. So that tells me it's still kind of like holiday mode. A lot of people aren't working.
Yeah.
Wednesday was New Year's Day. Some people didn't go back to work on Wednesday and Thursday. So um, if it's the traffic is light, then it's still holiday spirit.
Yeah.
And look, it's still the regular season, so it's fine, right? It's fine. Next week you say Happy New Year. I'm like, let's move on here.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I
Yeah.
saw a meme online where people were saying, because a lot of people went back to work Thursday, they were saying this is the Mondayest Thursday
Yeah.
ever. For a lot of people going back. But everyone's shaking that holiday funk now, or at least they should. Let's talk about this game we got coming up on Sunday, because I feel like it's bittersweet. A lot of people can't wait for this season to end. A lot of people still wish the Giants, obviously, were still playing after Sunday. And I feel like two of the biggest storylines going into this one, Paul, are obviously Saquon not playing and the draft implications. So I will defer to you. Which one do you want to start with?
Well, let's do the one. The draft implications are huge, obviously,
Yeah,
but that's for down the road. We still
yeah,
got a game here, right? Look, we'll be doing these in the off season, and we'll talk about off season stuff. We still got a game in front of us, players practicing, things like that. Yeah, look, there are two teams that are playing in a game that doesn't mean much for either team. Team players, as we know, it means something to individual players, but to the team, the Eagles don't care if they finish 13-4 or 14-3. It doesn't matter to them. They're 13-3. They're looking ahead to the playoffs. They host a first round game next week. That's what they care about. And Nick Sirianni did really the only thing he could do, which is saying pretty much any player of significance will not play in this game, including Saquon Barkley. The Giants are going into a game team-wise. It is not significant. It is not, whether they finish, they finish with 13 losses or 14 losses or 3 wins or 4 wins. In a couple of weeks, no one's even going to remember what the record is. They'll remember what the draft pick is. They won't remember the record. So that is really the state of these two franchises, which is sad. The Eagles are resting guys, and they don't care about the outcome of this game because of one reason. And the Giants are going to play all their guys, but the outcome of the game really doesn't matter as far as standings for a different reason. And that's rough. As far as Saquon, look, it would have been some spectacle if they had something to play for. If they had like a seeding and they were playing and he was 100 yards short of this record, it would have been some spectacle. I'm sure the Giants would have been hell bent to stop him. Good luck with that, right? You know what I mean? They could have maybe loaded up, the box tremendously, and then, whoever was the quarterback could have thrown the ball, but we're not going to see it. It's the smart move. I saw some quotes from Saquon. He said his dad was upset, his father was upset. He said this record would have been part of our legacy, part of our family, and now we're not going to have it. Saquon understands that. He understands the team. Saquon said he would have played certainly if the coach said go play. It's complicated. It is complicated, but not really when you think of what's at stake for the Eagles.
yeah. When you think of what's at stake for them, the smart move, business decision on that end. But as a player, Paul, I would have wanted to play. And you don't. And he's such a class act as a Saquon, the same guy who could have broke his single game record against the Giants at MetLife Stadium. But we saw the video of him telling Sirianni, like, no, let the young boy eat. Let Gainwell go in there. So for Saquon, I feel like part of him is like, not so much I don't want to show up the Giants, but I don't need to show up the Giants. My body of work versus their body of work, we've seen enough when it came to who won Hard Knocks in that sense, who won that viral clip. But as a player, we're talking about a record. We're talking about chasing Jerry Rice. And I understand, like, now we've got the, 17-game seasons. It's going to be a lot easier for players to kind of get after a lot of these records. But when you're Saquon Barkley and you talk about the first, 5 or so years of your career, everyone was calling you a bust. Everyone was calling you, oh, you said he was a generational talent. But look at his numbers with the Giants. Oh, he's injury prone. Oh, he can't block on third down. This record should mean a lot when it comes to his legacy. And if I'm Saquon's family, I would have been in his ear. She'd be like, man, you got to play this game. You got to go out and play this game. But it makes sense, because if you go out, and for all the people who are like, oh, maybe you play one half, you get the record and you get out. On the third play of the game, you roll your ankle and you're not ready during that wild card round, then everyone is going to be like, fire Sirianni. Why would he even be playing? Everyone would be switching it up. So I get it.
Yeah, there's a couple of things to remember. Look, if Saquon plays, the starting offensive line has to play.
Oh,
right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Right, yeah, of course. You're not going to put Saquon out there with a backup offensive line to try to get a record.
Yeah.
So now the offensive linemen, I saw Lane Johnson speak about this. They wanted it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, if you're an offensive lineman, right, you don't think you want to be part of a 5-man offensive line group that set the all-time rushing record? That's you, right?
Yeah.
You know, you always see these. You know, I remember the old Buffalo Bills offensive line with O.J. Simpson. You know, you set that record, and as a lineman, you know, you bask in the glow of the running back. You do, right? I mean, you know, when running back runs for 160 yards. I talk to the running back, and then I talk to the offensive lineman, right?
Yeah.
And they have great stories. You know, I talk to Rich Soybert and David Deal and Snee and O'Hara about Tiki Barber and about Brandon Jacobs, right? They love talking about that stuff. They know, and then consequently, when you know, conversely, if the running game gets stymied, right? You go to the offensive lineman also. What happened? And they know, okay, now we got to do this drill. You know, I mean, but if you think of it, look, Saquon, I'm sure, would have loved.
Yeah.
He was not above it. You know, oh, I don't need to break the record against the Giants. He would have loved it. You know, he just did a commercial for a sleep thing, right?
Yeah.
And you know, when tweaking John Mara about not being able to sleep at night. You know, look, to the winners get the right to history, right? To the victors go the spoils. Saquon won. You know, and if you think of it, Brandon, he's the 9th player in history. I know 17 games versus 16 games, 14 games for other guys, to 2,000 yards. Let's just go. We have time, right? Let's go through this list, all right? We know Eric Dickerson. Okay.
Yep.
1984, 2105 in 16 games, okay? Adrian Peterson, number 2, all-time season, right? Jamal Lewis, Barry Sanders, Derrick Henry, Terrell Davis, Chris Johnson, then there's Saquon, then there's O.J. Simpson. Now, 14 on that list is Jim Brown, okay? Jim Brown had 1,963, no, he had 1,863 yards, 1,863 in 1963 in 14 games, okay? 14 games. Jim Brown started 118 games out of 118 games in a 9-year career. So I think we just have to put perspective. Jim Brown is the best, okay? He's not top of the list, but he played 9 years. He is the best. You know, Tiki, 15th on that list, rushing for a season, 1,860 in 2005. So, you know, Saquon has put himself up with, you know, with the kings of the running backs. You know, kudos to him. But he will not break the record. Maybe he can be a Super Bowl MVP or something like that. That comes next for him, maybe.
Yeah, I was thinking about where you're talking about interviewing the offensive lineman after a big rushing game. Had this been reversed and it would have been a Giants running back going, you would have went straight to Jermaine Illuminor. And he would have loved something like that. Him with the cowboy hat, he gives that offensive line personality. The linemen, they would love something like that. Plus the gift. Just think of what he would have gifted the lineman had he broken the record. He'll probably still get them something, but I don't want no sleeping pills. I want like a Rolex or something for breaking the record. Now, you mentioned it being a meaningless game for the Eagles, regardless if they go 13-4 or 14-3. Let's flip that, because for the Giants, if they go 3-14 or 4-13, Black Monday is still looming around the corner, Paul. So for this game and the quiet, all the noise, Do you feel like this regime, in terms of Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, who you can see over here on our new monitors on my right, is it, I don't want to say meaningless, but does something need to be shown here as the last, the last body of work that they can show ownership?
Well, I don't think winning this game against the Eagles, mostly backups. You can't have all backups in all the time. It's just the rosters aren't big enough.
Yeah.
But any player of significance, any guy who's got any kind of little ache or pain is not going to play, right? I think the Eagles are going to be down to their third quarterback, right? What's it, Tanner McKee from Stanford? Jalen Hurts is in concussion protocol. Kenny Pickett is banged up, so they go into a guy who's never started an NFL game. So here's what I would say. It would be embarrassing for the Giants to lose this game. We're not talking about draft implications. On the field in Philly, they have not won there in forever. For the Giants starters, who's ever left of their starters, to go play the Eagles backup and lose would be embarrassing. So I would suggest to Brian Daboll, don't lose. Now, but I don't think winning this game, John Mara and Steve Tisch are then going to go back and say, we ended the year with 2 straight wins, and I feel good about that, and that's why we should bring everybody back. The ship has sailed on that. You know what I mean? No. Winning last week is helpful, certainly. Winning, what happened like last week was they avoided the worst kind of history, the first team in NFL history to go 0-9 at home. Okay, they avoided that. So this will be another thing to avoid. A season with 14 losses. No team in Giants history has ever lost 14 games in a season. Yeah. So that would be some kind of infamy. Another thing, no team has ever gone winless in the division since 1970, I don't think. So the Giants, what do we always hear? We got to close the gap on the Cowboys. We got to close the gap on the Eagles. We got to maintain our dominance of the Commanders. They could go 0-6 in the division. So at least this would be a win, and they would not be 0-6. They'd be 1-5 in the division. Now, I'm grasping at straws here, as far as, saying for reasons why these guys should return. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think it's going to be a total house cleaning. We will see. Maybe one stays, one goes. Maybe Joe Schoen stays and Brian Daboll goes. Maybe they both stay. John Mara has preached, I want to be patient. We'll see we'll put it this way. This season has tested everyone's patience to the max. We'll see how that plays out on Monday.
Yeah, 2024 was a campaign year for the presidential election, but seen a lot of advocating and campaigning going on to keep Brian Daboll, and that's through media availabilities, not only by him after the Colts win, when he kind of gave us that subliminal message of, hey, look what I can do when I have the right quarterback or good quarterback play. And then we saw it through the wide receivers this week through your piece when the post you guys spoke with Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton. Now and I kind of did a Instagram reel on this, but Darius Slayton, and this is pretty interesting. I know he's the Walter Payton Man of the Year candidate for the Giants. Very upstanding guy. We could both agree on. He could be the guy that could come out and get all the retweets if he was to say something negative. Here's a guy that's been through 3 head coaches in 6 seasons. He's had to take a pay cut. He had to hold out to get an incentive-based contract this year, which when you look at his previous stats, he wasn't going to match that. We're talking like Pro Bowl caliber numbers for him to reach that extra, I believe, $2.5 million. He could have easily buried Brian Daboll and came out and been that distraction that everyone's been looking for, and able for that to be the cherry on the cake. Like, you see, the players have turned on him. Wan'Dale Robinson, yes, he is drafted by this regime. He was I guess you can kind of say a project pick by this regime for the second pick to be small guy, gizmo gadget guy. 80, which is a career high. But we mentioned 7.9 yards per catch. Any receiver would be frustrated with this, but 83 catches, that means you have over 100-something targets. That means this offensive coordinator, your head coach, is targeting you to get the ball. Now, what's something we've agreed on this entire time? The ball placement when it comes to Wan'Dale Robinson has been absolutely atrocious this year because he hasn't been able to catch, and run. He's a yak receiver, all these guys. So when you got two receivers who they work very closely with the Brian Daboll, they're right there in the install meetings and they're sitting back like, oh, that's my play. We're calling that this week. Oh, we're definitely going to take this shot. We're going to run this this flicker on 3rd and 1 in Germany, and all the European fans are going to love this. And then you see guys wide open, and then they're mad because the ball didn't get out to them. Advocating for the play caller, not the playmaker, and the playmaker being the quarterback. So that could help, because when we talked about Antonio Pierce getting the head job for the Raiders last year, remember Mark Davis spoke with both with Devontae Adams and Max Crosby. He's going to go to the leaders of the locker room and be like, or John Mara's going to go to the leaders of the locker room and be like, hey, what has the locker room been like since Daniel Jones left? And I think that Brian Daboll can have Drew Lock have another good game against this B team. I think he sends that very last subliminal to everybody. I think it's going to be a little bit more obvious this time what he's talking about, who he's talking about, the position. I think that's his one last time at the podium. Like, hey, I know I'm 18-31-1, but you get me a QB, I can cook, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, Darius Slayton, I asked him, he said it's been 3 years. I think another year to try and give him a chance to really get things going would be warranted. So he said yes. Wan'dale was a little more, Wan'dale, like you said, was drafted by these people, and I think he and Daboll maybe are a little closer. He said, I would love for him to be back. He's the one who drafted me, stood up on the table for me. I believe in him. He believes in me. Now, Kayvon Thibodeau was also asked about it the other day in the locker room. And, Kayvon can sometimes not be so emotional. He's a little more cerebral, and he was very strong with Daboll. He said, I love him. I think he's a great coach. He's a player's coach. He's got great philosophies. Sometimes things just don't shake out for the season. I got total confidence in the organization and total confidence in the coaching. Now, a lot of times fans don't want to hear this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're frustrated with the players. These are players they think are losing players because the team is losing. And they say, well, what? And one thing, though, Brandon, I would say is, in all sports, when you hear at the end of the year when there's a coach on a hot seat and some of the core players support the coach, right? These are the core players who play all the time. You know what I mean? So a lot of times they don't have beefs with the coach or the manager, because they play me all the time. I'm good with them. And for them to say, well, I don't think he should be the coach is kind of saying it's all on him. It's not on me. So, I don't think ownership is going to, do a big study of the locker room. I think they know Brian Daboll's popular. This was not, a case where there was a mutiny or a case where he lost the locker room. That certainly is not the case. He did not lose the locker room. He just lost too many games, and we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, and if you compare it to what the Jets are going through right now, you don't have a Sauce Gardner or the Giants saying publicly that guys have checked out. You haven't heard that. Remember, we heard Dexter Lawrence say that guys weren't receiving Brian Daboll's message, and you guys, the beat writers, asked him, can you clarify that? And he was saying, when he did clarify it, he was saying, we're talking about not turning the ball over. We're talking about not making mistakes and penalties. He kind of clarified that, but it wasn't anything along the lines of this guy's checked out, this guy's brought golf bag or his golf clubs to the locker room and all. So it's just going to be interesting to watch. Obviously, no matter what happens this Monday, I feel like, this Sunday, John Mara's mind is made up, and I think that both end up staying because, again, you got to get these guys a quarterback. Let's move on and talk about this rookie class, because this rookie class has been a bright spot for this team. Tyrone Tracy Jr., obviously Malik Neighbors, Drew Phillips. The list goes on in terms of key contributors from this team. Paul, if you could give, outside of Malik Neighbors, who's been your favorite rookie to watch? Who's been a couple of your standout and a couple of your standouts in terms of core pieces for the future?
Yeah, I talked to a bunch of the guys, in the last few days. There's only 6 guys in the class. 5 of them have been big contributors. Now, as a contrarian could say they've been big contributors to a bad team. I get it. I get it. Rookies can only do so much. And I found out that these rookies have a chat. Just the draft picks have a chat, and they go to dinner very often together on the road together. And they said we chop it up. We talk about rookie stuff. We talk about life. We talk about how we can make a difference. This group, this class of 2024 is very tight, and they're very proud of what they've done. And it's an interesting group. I mean, as far as they feel, I think Tyrone Tracy said to me that, we got to the point where, we were rookies and they were veterans, and we went out to practice fields like, okay, we've got to deal with the veterans. And he said after a while it became, okay, the veterans now have to deal with us.
Uh-oh,
And
yep.
he didn't say it boastfully. He said, okay, we have to be part of the difference here and the culture change. And, we can do a lot of it, but we can't do all of it. So, Drew Phillips told me, I think we got a great rookie class. He said we were all balling. So, obviously Malik, you mentioned, okay, not Malik, he was great to watch. I think Tyrone Tracy. Look, Newman has been good. He got hurt, unfortunately. He was not the splash playmaker that he was at college at Minnesota. But, so I think he was feeling his way there. He had a lot of tackles. And everyone in the group completely says that Newman is the leader. He will be a team captain. He is that kind of a guy. Didn't see all of that manifest itself in year one. That's fine. Drew Phillips has been a terrific slot corner. Terrific. Good tackler, tough guy. He was very good, had a little swoon, and now is finishing strong. Very good. Theo Johnson, very slow start at tight end, and then he really picked it up before he got hurt, had a bad foot injury, really picked it up. I think he's going to be a good player. And even Darius Muasau, he's had to play inside linebacker, doesn't look out of place. Certainly he's not Bobby Okereke or Micah McFadden, but he's battling. But Tyrone Tracy, to me, he's a good player. I thought he was clearly a number 2 running back in the combo. Now I'm thinking next year maybe he can be a number 1 as long as they get a good number 2, whether it's Devin Singletary or someone else. He usurped the job from Devin Singletary. There's no question about that. But this group is and that is one of the strongest legs for Joe Shane to stand on. You can nitpick a lot. It's not even nitpicking. It's just the truth. His first 2 drafts leave something to be desired. This last one was a very good draft class, and I think if he goes into management and says, "Look, with this draft class, we're getting things done with this draft class," that will aid him in any future evaluations for if he stays or goes.
I love how you kind of brought us into what they're thinking and like the brotherhood in terms of them going to dinner on the road. And when you say things like, when you hear the rookies say things like, now the veterans have to deal with us, now that light clicked on in terms of we're the culture. We're the ones that's got to get ourselves out of this rut, because you could be looking at an older guy and he could do his rah-rah speech, or he could be saying what we need to do. Hey, going forward, we need to. But as a rookie, you could be looking at him like, bro, you might be out of here next year. Like, you may not even be that core piece. They may have to ship you out to bring in somebody else. So I'm not saying it's there at that point, but I've been on teams in terms where not so much the rookies, but the younger guys had been making better plays or bigger plays than the older guys. So it's like we're older guys are trying to police the locker room, but it's the younger guys who have now been stepped into that leadership role. And I think my favorite player out of this rookie class, and I believe the biggest upgrade in terms of who he replaced the year before, remember, we're omitting Malik Neighbors, Drew Phillips, 2 forced fumbles and an interception this season. That's double the next guy, the next player on this team when it comes to turnovers forced. We look at some of the tackles he made, some of the impact plays he made just by stepping up and putting his face in it. I saw a sweep. I forget which game. It was a sweep, and they pulled the guard, and he went on and took the guard on. Didn't go low, but took him on. The kid has absolute dog in him. And when I spoke to him after the game for a little bit, after they won the Colts game, both he and Tyrone Tracy both said, man, it feels good to get that monkey off of our back. We're rookies,
When I talked to Drew Phillips the other day, and I said, man, you could not have lived for yourself if you went through this whole season not getting an interception, right? And he said, oh man, he said, you know what? Before every game, I would say to the guys, this is my game. I'm going to get one. I'm going to get one. I'm going to feel it. And he said, in every game, I didn't do it. And he said, this last game against the Colts, he said, for some reason, I didn't say it. I didn't say anything,
Uh-oh.
and I got it. So he said, once I got one, I'm going to get a bunch. Now, obviously, the season's almost over here. Look, if you look at this class, right, Malik Nabers is the best wide receiver on the team, probably the
Yep.
best player, the best wide receiver on the team. I think Tyler Newman was the best safety on the team.
Yep.
Drew Phillips, I think, was the best cornerback on the team,
Yep.
and that's a team with Deonte Banks. He definitely played better than him. Theo Johnson became the best tight end,
Yes, he
pass
did.
catcher on the team. Tyrone Tracy clearly was the best running back on the team. I mean, now it's not a good team, okay? That's not good for the team to have all these rookies be the best because they're still evolving and developing. But for these guys in this class, yes, they can look at themselves and say, we're not the top chefs here on this team, but we're better than a lot of the veterans on the team. So, we don't have to stand back and just listen to what they say. They do listen to what they say, but they should listen to what we say as well. So, it's a good thing for Joe Shane, this draft class. It really is.
My only thing when it comes to Tyrone Tracy Jr., and it's no negative or anything, but it just goes back into that sentiment you were talking about, how your numbers can be inflated because you are the best player as a rookie on this team. And it takes me back to the 2022 season. Dameon Pierce, rookie running back for the Texans, looked great. 220 carries, 939 yards, 4 touchdowns, right? What was the Texans' record that year, you think?
They didn't have a winning record.
They're 3-13, Paul.
Yeah.
They're 3-13. Then the following year, they drafted C.J. Stroud, which was last year. They looked good. His numbers went down. Ah, man, I thought I had it already up. But his numbers went down. His numbers went down last year, and his numbers went down this year again. And the numbers went down so much last year that they brought in Joe Mixon. So when it comes to Tyrone Tracy Jr., love him. Think he's going to be one of the running backs of the future. But I think his numbers could go down a little because you could use him, a new coach or Brian Daboll could look and use him in a completely different manner than just playing running back. I think
Look,
he's going to get
in the
more
NBA,
opportunity.
in the NBA, someone has to score 18 points a game on the bad teams.
Yeah.
They just have to. Someone's going, you add it up, right? Yes, someone has to have yardage. I mean, the Giants are not a great running team, but Tyrone Tracy happens to be the rushing leader. That's fine. Now, we're not anointing him as the next great running back, or anything like that, but he did more than we expected as a rookie, and there's reason to hope for the future with all these guys that they will be, more than contributing players. They could be impactful players. Yeah.
You pair Tyrone Tracy up with another solid running back, and Tyrone Tracy runs for 11 to 1,200 yards next season. That would be great. You have to have 3 running back system in this league, and it's surprisingly the Giants didn't have that this year. We thought we were going to see something a little more from Eric Gray, but once he fumbled that ball against the Seahawks on the goal line, we haven't seen him since, Paul. And they've gone no nonsense when it comes to that. Let's round this thing out before we get to your final thought with the Pro Bowl. Got to give a shout out to Dexter Lawrence. Got a 3rd Pro Bowl in the year. First Giants player to do that since Landon Collins. Brian Burns and Malik Nabers were named alternates. Remember, I saw, I don't know if it came from you, a tweet from you, or if it was from our colleague Ryan Dunleavy. He had tweeted that at the beginning, in August, the beginning of the season, Dexter Lawrence had said that he doesn't want to be the only guy to make the Pro Bowl. Brian Burns, I believe, can still make it because one of the guys that's in front of him, I believe, is going to be playing in the Super Bowl. Does that count Does that count as having 2 guys in the Pro Bowl to you, or what?
Well, you know what? These guys, they all have incentive clauses, 250,000 or something for Pro Bowl. So if they get in one way or another, they're going to get paid. So yeah. Look, the Pro Bowl's not what it was. It's not even a game, right? They don't even have a game anymore. So it's an honor. All pro is the thing that you want. Look, the Giants didn't have anyone who came close other than Dexter Lawrence, really. I mean, Brian Burns was good and Malik Nabers was good, obviously. But, Andrew Thomas got hurt. Bobby Okereke got hurt and wasn't having a great year anyway. the team was a bad team. So there was no, sometimes it's like, oh, maybe this guy, maybe that guy. I see Leonard Williams with Seattle is upset. He said, I thought I deserved to be in a Pro Bowl. Other
Hmm.
years, maybe Xavier McKinney, we thought Xavier McKinney made it for the Packers, right? You know what I mean? Giants are stocking the Pro Bowl rosters for other teams. You know what I mean? Saquon obviously made it. So yeah, I mean, look, Dexter was far and away the best player. He was far and away the best player. He's the only guy I think that people looked at and said, "Oh, good, we got a game plan for this guy." Even Malik Neighbors, you had a game plan for him, but I don't think anyone feared the Giants' passing game or their quarterback, so you didn't have to go too crazy with that. It's not like saying, "Well, we got a game plan against Jamar Chase because Joe Burrow is going to get him the ball every time." That wasn't happening with Malik Neighbors. So yeah, kudos to Dexter. These guys are gone. They've been gone for a while, and they're not in the locker room. You don't really see them, so you almost forget. You almost forget that Andrew Thomas is on the team, or
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he's really been gone, or Dexter Lawrence. You forget. Then you say, well, let's analyze the offensive line. I did that the other day in a column I wrote, and I was like, oh yeah, next year I'll have Andrew Thomas back, and everything looks better because your best player is there. Everything looks better on the defensive line because Dexter is there. He's the best player. Um, yeah, good for him. Look, it's amazing, isn't it, when you think of it? Before the year, it sounded like the Jets would have 5 or 6 or 7 guys who would be in the Pro Bowl, and the Giants would have very few. So the Giants have one guy in and 2 alternates, and the Jets had nobody.
Yeah. Yep.
Nobody from a
Yep.
team that was
Yep.
supposedly stacked. So the good teams, they have the good records, they load them all up, and sometimes guys get it, even though maybe someone's more deserving, but the better teams, they're on TV more, people notice them more. It happens. But look, no one can quibble with the Giants. Dexter's the best player. He gets it. Everyone else, Burns is probably right where he should be as an alternate.
Yep, yep. And I think Malik Neighbors is right where he should be
Yeah,
as an
yeah.
alternate. I think he ends up making the actual Pro Bowl list because when you think of Amon St. Brown, Terry McLaurin, some of those guys that's on the list through in the NFC, they should be playing in the Super Bowl. So Malik Neighbors gets that. He gets that call up. But here's the thing, Paul. Here's what I'm worried about. And here's what I don't want to see happen to Malik Neighbors. And maybe I could just be, I could just be one. I'm a parent now, so I'm just, I'm worried about things 24/7. Malik Neighbors, 14 games, 1,140 yards, 4 quarterbacks. Who does that sound like in the Pro Bowl wide receiver? Which Pro Bowl wide receiver that made it this year does that sound like? Able to still get 1,000, 4 different quarterbacks.
I'm trying to think. Tell me. I'm sure I don't.
Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin. Remember, he was a walking 1,000 yards. He went through Heineke. He went. I can't even name all the quarterbacks that he's
Yeah,
had.
yeah.
He went through quarterback after quarterback after quarterback. And when we talked about some of the greatest receivers in the game right now, people would leave Scary Terry's name out because they didn't even know he had 1,000 because of
Yeah.
the quarterbacks he was dealing with. I pray for this kid, Malik Neighbors, that they get him a Jaden Daniels, his former teammate, or they get him that type of quarterback because now Terry McLaurin is finally getting his flowers as one of the top tier receivers in this league after years of having to play with subpar quarterbacking. Malik Neighbors only had what 1 year this year alone, but I feel like for him, looking at the core piece that he is, being the exciting piece that he is at MetLife Stadium, I hope he gets the quarterback that can really
They all
unlock
need a
who he
quarterback,
is.
Brandon.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
all need it.
yeah,
They
yeah,
all need it.
yeah,
Neighbors and Wan'dale and whoever the coach is, they all need
yeah,
it. The
yeah,
offensive line, they all need it. We know that, and that's why fans are upset about the draft. To me, the draft is after the season. You know what I
yeah,
mean? You
yeah,
play,
yeah.
and then you see where you are, and then you plan accordingly. So that will be for next week, whether they're 4 or 5 or 7, or they could drop as low as 9. They could be 9 if they win and everybody else, loses. So we'll see. We'll see where it is. You know what? Before the Colts game, they were number one, right? They
Yeah,
they were number one. But it was temporary. That's what I
yeah.
kept saying. They have the one. They have the one. Well, that now the season's not over now. So they won a game, and they dropped to 4, and that's just the way it is. We'll see where it is next week. After Sunday night, we'll know where they are.
Well, I read up where the Giants need to lose to Philly, plus they need wins by New England, Tennessee, and Cleveland to have that #1 draft pick back. That's what's that 2% chance I believe I read. That's not something. If I was in Vegas and I saw I had a 2% chance on anything, I'm not putting a chip down on that square right there, Paul. So it doesn't look like it's going to happen. But at the end of the day, you play to win the game. All right, here is the last final thought of the regular season, the first of the new year. Mr. Paul, floor is yours. Final thought, close us out here.
I mean, as soon as I saw, when they made the schedule, you always look at the games. Where's this one going to be? Where's this one going to be? Where are the cold weather games? Where are going to be? Where am I ending the season? I'm ending the season in Philly. And I looked at that, and I always think when it's the last game, is that going to mean anything? Is that going to mean anything? I said it probably means something to Eagles or maybe nothing because they've got things wrapped up. And I said, will it mean something to the Giants? And I said, probably not. I mean, I don't know if they're going to be fighting for the playoffs then or anything. I think that's a stretch, maybe, but probably not. I did not think it would be like this, though, where it hasn't meant anything for a long time. So, look, it's a really bad season. And if they, I was serious about that as far as no one's going to remember what the record is. You know what I mean? You remember if you're 14-3 or, but you don't remember if, you just don't remember. The playoffs, take on a new life of their own. The Giants aren't going to the playoffs. So this game will be long forgotten. It'll have maybe, be interesting to see what the crowd is, if there'll be a little bit of a preseason feel to it. If the Giants win big, so be it. They're playing against backups. I'm not so sure that's going to happen. They'll probably win, but, we'll see. I don't think the Giants can dominate anybody that easily, even backups. And even if they do, it's been a terrible season, and fans deserve better. And, the real important thing comes right after this game, maybe Monday or Tuesday, where we see what, if any, changes are going to be made. Because if there are changes, that changes everything, right? The whole dynamic changes. Who's calling the shots? Who's making those picks? Who's signing the free agents? Who's coaching these guys? We see that a bunch of these teams are already interviewing coaches, right? And GMs, the teams that fired people, they can all do that. The Giants are going to wait. And if they make changes, they're going to have to get on that wheel. It's like a wheel. And once you get on that coaching carousel wheel, you got to jump on it, and then you got to find your guys. So we'll see. We'll see if they're on that wheel, and pretty soon we'll find out.
Yeah, and you talk about how all these guys need a quarterback. We mentioned Dameon Pierce's stats in 2022 and the Texans being at 3-13. The very next offseason, they drafted C.J. Stroud, and now they're going to back-to-back playoffs since having C.J. Stroud. Water, oxygen, and a quarterback. That's what Giants fans need right now going into this new year. And you know what? That's a wrap on today's show, y'all. In our last Blue Rush of the season, we're going to thank you to the fans who stuck with us and this team throughout the season. We have appreciated every single share, retweet, and comment, even the nice, not so nice ones that get me in trouble for clapping back. But you know what? It's going to be a very active offseason for the Giants. So make sure that you guys check in with us because we're going to have more shows for you all throughout the new year. Thanks to our Blue Rush team, our producers, Emma Kate Austin and Jeff Stansberry, of course, and all the editors who worked on the shows and everyone who made this show happen. For Paul Schwartz, I'm Brandon London. Happy New Year, everybody.